Hello. Okay. Okay, I just changed the microphone on the webinar. Can you guys hear it now better? Or I don't know what you're doing if you turned it off. I'm not sure here where we're at. Are you still getting the lag? No. Okay. I think we got it then. All right. Okay, so what we're going to do today, I've taken roll. You hear a repeat. Okay. Sherry, what you're going to have to do is turn off, mute is what I'm saying. Second Life, yeah. And then you'll get the audio from the webinar. There we go. So happy people know that. All right. You guys are getting really good. Okay. Now, okay, I guess the first thing we need to do is go over the syllabus. And we're going to do this because primarily for the schedule. Okay, I want to show you what we're doing with the schedule. So let me get back into here. Let me mark this first. I know Brian and Todd are probably trying to get here, but they're not here yet. If they get here, we'll mark them present. Cal Mosley. Save. All right. There we go. Okay. Save. Content. And syllabus. Okay. We're not worried about that. You all have your book. I'm not concerned about that. It's the Hoisington book. What I wanted to talk to you about was this. Now, what we're doing today is we're going to go over the first content notes. And those content notes are on a PowerPoint in Second Life. So that's what we'll look at first. Then I'm going to show you how to do a simple web page. Now, the web pages are not that difficult, but they can be kind of tricky because there's 3 different parts to them. All right. And then you're going to have a sample web page too. Just something real simple. All right. So other things I'm going to do in this class besides this, we're going to be looking at things other than what they cover in the book. So for example, in this book, she's going to tell you how to do a web page with a template. Fine, that's great, and a master page. But that's not the only kind of web page that exists. So we're going to look at doing other things. Okay? We're going to look at just how do we do a regular web page. All right, so that's going to take us through September 9th because we're going to have a website. All right. Then we're going to do Chapter 8. We have a test on Chapter 7, and then we have a test on Chapters 8 and 9. The custom program assignment. Again, documentation and code will be due separately. Documentation first, code second. If you don't get the documentation in, you get a 0 for your code. You got to get it in. It has to be done on time. All drop boxes and stuff are already set up. Again, we're going to be doing the knowledge check, the debugging exercises, and the program analysis, and that's all there too. All right. And that stays the same all the way through. The Chapter 11 test will be given during the final week of exam, during final exam week. Now, I know we didn't write a program specifically on loops, but we're going to be using them throughout the semester. So I decided not to worry about that part of 6, and we'll pick up the rest of 6 when we do Chapter 8. It just seemed it was an easier way to do that. If we go down here to the evaluation, tester 35%, program assignments are 25%, and the programs and documentation are 40%. Now, you know, you guys have heard this commitment over and over and over again. I'm not terribly worried about you being committed. You're all here. You know, we got what we've got. Any questions on the assignments or on the syllabus? Now, this class is going to run from approximately 3:30. If you're typing in a question, go right ahead and type. Approximately 3:30 to 5:30 or 5:45. All right. The reason I gave us a little bit of extra time this time is just in case we need it for some of the examples which are more difficult. Okay? All right. Kelly, have you heard anything from Brian? Do we still have the lag like we had last? Oh, there's Brian. Okay. I missed you. All right. Did you just pop in, Brian, or did I miss you somehow? Ah, okay. And I was looking at D2L. It doesn't matter. That's cool. All right. Brian, you got your no lag with the sign from the webinar. Okay. Ask questions here in Second Life because I'm going to be using the PowerPoint today. Kelly, that's going to vary. If I bring up a, I'll get out here in a minute. If I bring up a program and we're working with a program, I'll pop on the webinar screen, the webinar panel, and you can ask questions there. And Todd, good to go. All right. Glad you got here. Guys, this is Todd Blackburn that just popped in with us. He's joining us this semester. And you can all introduce yourself at some point, okay, around the way. All right, so let me get this attendance corrected here for both Brian and Todd. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, I don't need anything more out of here. Oh, one more thing. The content modules also have things like this web basics. This is the first content, the first notes that I'm using today. We'll get to some other ones. I don't have them available to you yet, but I will be making them available as we go. It's helpful to me if you read them ahead of time so that when I go to, hang on a minute, so that when I go to do the lectures, if you have any questions, okay, give me a minute, there we go. When I go to do the questions, If you have any questions from something you've read, you can pop in at the appropriate moment. All right? I need to get over here to the IST 271. There we go. Contents first. No, I hit chapter 10. Oh, well. Okay, hang on. We don't want to do chapter 10 yet. Hang in there a minute with me. There it is, right there. Just hit the wrong thing. Margie, yes, I'm trying my best to get them available ahead of time. Not necessarily the PowerPoints, although Mariella hopes I have those available too. But the, yeah, the content notes. All right. Okay. All right. So what we're doing here is we're talking about some things that are not in the book, but things that you need to know about writing ASP pages. The course notes are already there, Kelly. This is course notes 1. Whoops. Okay. All right. So all of you know, I know you know, that you have a client computer, the internet, and a server computer, right? Okay. So when we come over here, we're going to be looking at how do we create web apps. Now, web apps are different than Visual Basic apps. In a web app, you have a client-server app. I don't know why you can't see it. I'm working with the live media board. Hang on here a minute. We'll get it fixed. Yeah, I think you need to be in GoToMeeting if you're not. I'm sorry, guys, that I had to change it, but I didn't have a choice. I just found out yesterday that capture wasn't going to work. Okay. We're all going to have to get used to this. Okay. Margie, are you okay? Okay, then just watch it from GoTo. That's fine. All right. So we have a client-server app. And that's different than what we look at when we're looking at a regular VB app, because a regular VB app has not necessarily anything to do with the server. Well, I did that wrong. Okay, so hang on a minute. Okay, so the user at the client accesses the app at the server. So what you write actually resides on the server. Your client has the browser, and the browser acts as a user interface for the app. So when you create your form for a web application, what you're doing is creating the user interface that will interact with the server. The application is going to run on the server computer, and it's under control of server software. I think your book says IIS. Do not install IIS on your machines. IIS has major security problems, or has had it for as long as I've known it. You don't need it to run your Visual Basic applications. They install kind of a temporary one on there where you're running it and then it goes away. Your browser and your server are going to exchange information using HTTP, which is Hypertext Transfer Protocol, because the protocols are what computers use to talk back and forth. But the thing you need to remember is that the app is no longer on the client, but it is on the server. All right. You have two basic types of web pages. A static page is one that doesn't change in response to the user input. It's going to look the same every time anyone views it. All right. I was going to say example of that is the college's homepage, but they've recently updated it, so it's actually a dynamic web. When we process a static app, the client sends an HTTP request to the web server. The web server has an HTML file on it that it then sends back using the hypertext transfer protocol to the browser. No matter how many times you hit this server, you're going to get the same page. And that's pretty much what the internet used to be like. You just kind of went out there, you grabbed the HTML pages, and that's what you got. When the page is requested, the server retrieves the file from disk and sends it back. Usually, these have extensions of HTML or HTML. You worked with these static type pages and some other kinds, but you worked with these static type pages in IST 225 or 226, depending upon which one you took. Okay. Now, the opposite of static would be dynamic, but I guess we're going to talk about browser requests first. All right. The hypertext transfer protocol requires certain things. It requires the name of the file being requested, the internet address of the browser, and the internet address of the server. The request is started by you entering the URL and clicking a link, or clicking a link. Now, guys, you're all familiar with this, but what you have to start doing is looking at it in a different manner. In other words, when you type in an address, start trying to identify the file, the browser, and the web server. Start thinking about what you're doing, okay? Because it's different when you write the programs. When the server response comes back, you get the address of the browser making the request, the address of the server filling the request, and the HTML requested. Now, the address of the browser does not necessarily show up on your address line. It's in the HTTP response so that the, why am I all of a sudden getting an echo? I don't know. Anyway, so that, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought because I was getting an echo. It's in the HTTP response so that the protocol can check to make sure you're sending this back to the correct browser, but it does not necessarily show up. All right, the dynamic web page or web application. One or more web pages that are not, that should have a T in it, static. Each time the page displays, it can change. Now, sometimes that change can be as little as a date. Other times, it can be as much as the entire page. It just depends upon what you're writing. Dynamic web apps are not stored on the server as HTML files. Rather, when the page is requested, the page is built dynamically by the app with the information that is required. All right. Your dynamic web pages are web forms. You're going to contain server controls, labels, text box, buttons, and you're going to use the controls for interaction with a dynamic web page. This dynamic web page can include database access, but does not have to. You can have a dynamic web page without having database access. So when you have a dynamic web page request, your HTTP request goes to the web server. Then it goes to the application server. In our case, for this class, it's going to be ASP.NET, active server pages. Then it goes to the web application, and that's the ASPX that you will see as an extension on some files. You then have the web application returning the information to the application server, which returns it to the web server, which then uses an HTTP response to send it back to the browser. So it's a much more complex route that it takes. Okay? If ASP.NET and dare I say a Microsoft, I guess you can do it with other web servers, but if an ASP.NET application server is not loaded on your web server, you can't do ASP.NET pages. Now, obviously, in the big ranges, the big view of things, everything has it. That only becomes applicable when we start talking about, like when we work with our projects and things like that. All right. Are there any questions about this? No. Okay. All right. Let's keep going then. All right. So when we have our dynamic web processing, the first thing starts out the same. You send a HTTP request to the web server. The request is going to contain the address of the web page requested, the information that the user entered on a form. The user looks up the extension of the requested page in a list in the applications mapping. Okay? So we can have ASPX. This is an ASP.NET application server. PHP would go to a PHP application server. So you're talking two separate things here. These servers, I don't want you to think that they're standalone pieces of hardware. What they are application servers that reside on a web server with something. PHP will reside with usually MySQL and Apache on one physical box. The ASP.NET will usually reside with not IIS, but SQL Server and Windows Server 8, 9, whatever version you're using. All right. So what you essentially have is you have the split here between the open source and the Microsoft. Right? And it's the application mappings that tell which extension is associated with which program. All right. When you execute the web form, the information is processed. The HTML document is generated, and then the server returns the page to the browser. Remember how different this is from what we mentioned with the static web page. With the static web page, it just runs out, finds an HTML page, and brings it back. With this, the program that you write generates the page, generates the HTML document, and then sends it back. So you have to keep in mind your static forms, your static web pages will always run faster than the dynamic pages, always. Because all they have to do is go out and get a pre-built page. But at the same time, you can't display up-to-date data on a static web page. So you got to take those two things into consideration. Now, when you do this, when you start the HTTP, in other words, you're going to go send this information back to the server. It's called posting back to the server. We can control post back. And we'll talk about how we do that. We don't usually do it so much in ASP as we do in PHP, but we can control that post back. And the round trip is when you request it, starts when you request it, and ends with the server sending the response back to the client. Now, when they send the response back to the client, the page is done. All right, the script ends. And that brings us to the next problem. How do we keep track of what information has been sent back? Now, if you don't give the server a file name, you're going to look for one of 6 names, and that should be default. Don't ask me where my fingers were the other day. .htm, default.asp, index.htm, and then if it's an IIS server, we'll also look for iisstart.asp. If it's an IIS server running on Windows 7, it will look for index.html or default.aspx. You can update these names so that they would look for something else that you'd want to call it. The easiest way around this is to just call your home page index.htm. Okay. Now, your dynamic web page app ends after the page is generated. Okay, but we have data out there that we might want to keep track of. State is the status of any data maintained by the application. Go ahead. In order to make what dynamic, Zach? Yes. Well, let me just say this. Yes, putting a function like today in a box somewhere would make the web application dynamic. However, that's an incredibly simple dynamic web page. We're talking about something else completely. I mean, we're talking about much more complex dynamic web pages. Because we are talking about these more complex dynamic web pages, we have to keep track of the state. State is the status of data. In other words, what values are held in what variables. That's essentially what state is. HTTP is a stateless protocol. Not all protocols are, but HTTP is. So it doesn't keep track of the state between round trips. Once that dynamic web page app ends, then you lose your state because the server has no way to associate the browser with the previous request. So essentially you're up a creek if you don't keep track of the state yourself. State is also used in Windows apps, but it's not as critical in most Windows apps as it is in the web apps because you lose it. Okay, so if we look at a picture of this, you see where the browser sends the first request to page. All right, the browser returns the requested page and the app ends. The next request goes across, but the server doesn't understand that that's the same browser that made the previous request. So unless you have created some way to send it data, then you can't get the information. You can't continue to process the same information. Now there's several ways to process this. There's ways to process it that we'll talk about in PHP if you're in 262. There's ways to process it in ASP. The first of those is view state. If I view state, I can find the text properties of the labels and the list items in the drop-down list. It's a default that is implemented by ASP.NET and doesn't require any special coding. You can also create a session state object. Now this session state object on the server has a unique session ID. The ID can pass between the browser and the server when the pages are requested, and we can add information to the session. As long as you know the session ID, you can then retrieve the information and use it in your program. What does this do? It makes the data available continuously as long as you're in the browser, until you close the browser. Let me put it that way. All right. You also have an application state. Now, application state only uses or only saves application objects, data. All right? And the difference between it and session is that it applies to all users of an application. So if I want to know how many users on the internet were using Facebook at one time, okay, hang on here a minute, Zach. I'm apparently missing something. I'm only getting bits and pieces of your conversations. There we go. Kind of like email. Okay, which one were you saying was kind of like email? Yes, dynamic apps are kind of like email applications, yes. Okay, the application state saves the application data of the application. So if you want to know how many users Facebook has logged on at one time, Facebook could go to application data. Whereas when we talk about session, that is only applies to the application running in the browser on the computer where you are. So session is unique to you. Application is wherever the application happens to be. All right. Questions? We then have profiles. Now, session state only exists as long as you're running the app in the browser and you haven't shut the browser down. Okay? So when we look at this, it's over here so I can see your questions. None of this, not session or anything else, okay, guys, look at Second Life so that you don't get logged out. session state, view state, or application state. None of this persists between sessions. Okay? If you want to keep information between sessions, then you create a profile. And the profile stores the state data in a database. When you're working with, I'll get out here in a minute. When you're working with, like, I'll get a shopping cart. That's what I meant. And you have a couple of different pages that you have to go to. You know, you're ordering, and then you're going back and ordering more, and then you're going to the cart. The session state and the application state are used to move, actually session state there is used to move the information from page to page. Okay? But every so often you'll get to a shopping area and it will save your cart for you to another time. All right? That means if they've created a profile. And that profile will exist on their server for X number of days. Most of them have them expire within 5 days. But the thing about that is it creates a semi-permanent record. And that's what a profile is. Okay, so that stuff is not in your book, but it is critical that you understand it because we're going to be creating a cart application, and you can't do that unless you understand state. All right, so do we have any questions? Hang on, I got to get it right here where I can see all you. Or I can look at it. There we go. Okay, now I got you all on screen. All right. So we have everybody, right? A shopping cart for web shopping could be using a session. But if you saved your cart to checkout later, it would be using a profile. Okay? Or cookies. Yeah, Margie, it's just like variable states. All state is saving. Remember what we said, the state is the condition or what the value is of each variable. That was last semester. Okay, that's all this is. When you pass a session state from one page to the next, all you're passing is the values of either the variables and or the labels, the text boxes, whatever. See, state is not is a term that refers to all of the information and all the variables, labels, etc. values on one page. In the case of when we're talking about like session state. So when one of those values change, your session state changes. So, you know, let's talk shopping cart because everybody's familiar with them. If you have 2 in the quantity and you change that to 1 and you update it, you know, you have to click that update button most of the time when you make a change in that. What that's doing is updating the session state. That's why you have to click the button so that the session state is updated. Questions? Okay, So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the PowerPoint from the book. Trying to keep an eye on the time here. Oh, fiddle. Just hit the wrong button. So that I have time to do the... Okay, chapter 271, chapter 8, 7. Okay, we got to back here. 271. Hang on. That crazy, I guess we'll hope this is chapter 7 because that the crazy webinar icon is right there in the middle. Yes, that's it. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do here, we're going to create a very simple web application first. All right. We can add objects, etc. We have already talked about a drop-down list object. I hate it when they introduce things like this on a special form because then people think they can only be used on the special form, like a calendar. Some things are unique to the web apps, but others can be used all the time. Okay, we have layouts, different layouts we can use for the web forms. Actually, the table is kind of a antiquated type of layout, but we do have it. You will love validating data on the web form. Validating the data on the web form is as simple as adding a validate control. It should be so easy on a Windows form, right? And then we'll talk about string manipulation methods. All right. Visual Studio allows you to create web apps. Web form is a page displayed in a web browser. So just like a Windows form is displayed in Windows, the web form is displayed on the web. And notice they don't even mention Chrome here. I'm not sure why, but they don't. Okay, so this is your app that you're going to create in your tutorial. Okay, all of the things that we're going to do here on the, yeah, I know, Yanni, I know. In our web apps are going to be dynamic pages. We're going to have data, user entering data, and web page reacts to the data, except something like a home page, which maybe introduces something or links you to wherever you want to go. Do you remember the vacation site we did last time, which when you clicked on it, it brought up the airfares, and then some of you brought up a second page, or some of you just displayed. Okay, yeah. In this case, if we were doing that as a web app, we would actually, bring it up and then take it further and take it on out. ASP.NET 4.0 creates active server pages, and that's what they call their pages that run dynamic sites. PHP pages are the open source. All right, so let me do this. Let me get to, we'll really blow this thing's tiny little mind. If I disappear, guys, I'll be back. It simply means I tried to start one too many things on my computer, which is always a possibility, right? Oh, cool. Maybe I won't try this. We'll see if this can handle all this. If not, maybe I can talk my way into a new computer. Cool. Or maybe it won't even load. Oh, didn't think about this. Oh, there we go. It's going to be fun when we go to do database stuff. I may have to do this for one of the classrooms with more memory. Okay. When you go to create a web page project, you don't go to New Project or Open Project. What you do is you come up here and you do New Website. All right, and that website is what you're going to use when it pops up. Now, we can create a website. If you click Create a Website, that creates a website with a master page. But you can also create an empty website, and that's what we're going to do today, because we're looking at a very simple one. All right, and you never ever want to leave it at website 1 for obvious reasons. So we're going to call this one example 1, and let me browse to the correct. I keep expecting this thing to crash totally. Folder here. Just do it right there. Open. Okay. So now it's going to go out there and it's going to create what we need. Now when you're working, open the existing website. I don't know what's there. Must have been something I was playing with. Okay. Oh, it is. Oh, I know what it is. It's a website that has, yeah, okay, I know what it is. All right. Okay. Now, it's going to ask you to install web components using a web platform installer. I'm going to go ahead and say, just go ahead and do that. I probably didn't need them because I think I've already installed them on here, but no, I have 4.5. This is 4.6, so anyway. No, we're not going to do that. Crap, we're going to crash it. Okay, let me get in here and let me bring up a web page. And since I'm here, I'm going to do this. And we're down here. Oh, there's a Murroc files. Yeah, okay, let's not do that. Yeah, I guess we can look at, let's look at the cart. This is not from our book, by the way. All right. Now, but let me point out something here while we're working with this. When you create your web page, you will get folders put in here for you. Your app code is where your VB code will be found. Your app data is where any databases will be. Your images, of course, are images. Okay, so let's look here at the cart. Notice we have a .aspx extension on here. So we're going to double click it. Now, the first thing you need to understand is that when you come up, all right, you have several different areas. This has a picture up here which probably isn't showing because of the memory problem, okay? You have, this is your form. ASPX is your form. And when you come down here, you can go to source. So I'm going to click source. Your source will look on an ASPX page will look just like your HTML anyplace else you've ever seen it, right? Here is your title. Here is your styles. Now, we do use external style sheets here, so we'll talk about that as we go through here. Here is your form. Now, forms must be given IDs. And I hate Form 1, but that happens to be what this book used. All right. Your shopping cart. Here's your table with all your information in here and your buttons that are going to show up and things like that. So your source is your HTML. Yes. Yes, Mariella. Hang on. No. Your systems won't handle this. But actually, some of yours may handle it better. No, we're just looking at this as a sample. Thank you, Mariella. All right, so this is our basic information here, right? Now let me get back to Second Life here somewhere. Okay. Yeah, I know you can, Margie. I know. You know, I know. I probably got the worst system of anybody in the class. Cut me a break. That's what the state gives me. All right. All right. So, yeah, turn the game off, Zach. So you gave yourself away. Yeah, I know. It probably wouldn't work that. I'd probably get one that wouldn't run anything. Okay. So when we look at this, okay, here's the deal. When we come back here and we look at this stuff, all right, I don't think there shouldn't be anybody in this class that cannot write this in HTML. Is that correct? If you think you can't do that simple form in HTML, you know, you need to go back and look at your IST 225, 226 book, because that's what we're talking about there. Right? Now, having said that, you still have your good old toolbox over here, right? And because you have a Windows or a web form up, you have different information in your toolbox. For example, you have an add rotator. You have a localize, where you can actually localize it for things. Your radio button, you have a radio button list. So you have a variety of things over here that are customized for your web form. So when we look at this, all right, this is just a form where we pull everything out onto here and we do whatever we need to do. Now, the code, which is in here, let me pick up a code. Okay. What we have here is we're using a product, and I can't see where they put the product code, but it's here somewhere. Okay. And you have a quantity, a product and a quantity, and these are your cart items. Oh, there it is right there. Right, here is your product object. Notice that your product class only has properties in it. This is a lousy way to define the properties, but it serves its purpose for this particular class, for this, because of the application it's being used in. All right. Here are all the properties of the product, and over here in the cart item, we actually set the product and the quantity. Okay. Now, if we look at the cart item list, this is a little bit different because we're working with lists of the cart item. Okay. Cart item is right here. Okay. So notice this is a property and this is a property, right? So we have a product object, we have a cart item project cart item object. Okay, 2 classes. We go to the cart item list, then we create a list of cart items. And then we come down here, and here's what we do with our VB. We get the cart, we add an item to the cart, we remove an item from the cart, and that's essentially what we do. Your shopping carts are not hard to create. I just wish you could see the images on here because some of them are kind of cute. I'm not going to try to run it because I think that would be really pushing the list, pushing the boat. So let me see if I can get this to create. All right, and notice as soon as I went into create new website, let's try this again. I got to put it someplace other than here. It immediately picked up all of the things that are in that particular folder. Now there is let me hang on. Well, I'm looking for drive C or desktop or something. Yeah. Okay, I'll be back. I'm coming right now. Desktop. Let me see if I can get it to do there. And I'm coming back to Second Life. Okay. Okay, hang on. Okay. Yes, Margie, what you're saying. Margie has had 262. It's like making the 2 separate pages in PHP. One will be in, they'll all be made in Visual Studio. And you will be able to see the form before you load it into the server. Yes, you're correct. Okay, so what we've done here is I come over here and I hope we're going to make an empty web page here. Desktop 2. That works. I don't know how I got that. Okay, so if you create an empty web page, this is what you end up with. All right, which is essentially nothing. Okay. So then you're going to add a new item to the website. Okay. What are we going to add? So you got lots and lots and lots of issues. At this point, we're going to add a simple web page. And it's going to be called default.aspx. Okay. And now we can do, and you know, here's your div, just like you have in IST 226. I mean, it all crosses over. All right. So let's go back to source here. Okay. So title, we're going to put in, okay. Now, here's our form ID. We can change that. We're probably not going to. And actually, you can work in a split mode. All right. And the split mode will do is allow you to see both pieces. Okay. So here's the div that you're actually working with here. All right. So in this div, just let me put in a, well, let me put in a calendar just for the heck of it. All right. So notice there, when I drag something from the toolbox, it's in here, it's given a name. so we can get the information from it. All right. And we'll put in a button. Now this is not the same as a form button. Notice right here it says it's an ASP button. Totally different. All right. Has a different parent. Does not derive from Windows.forms.forms button. Derives from, well, I can't remember, maybe it's web forms. I can't exactly remember, or maybe it's under ASP. But it is not the same, and it does not react the same. If I double click it, notice what happens. It brings up a default.aspx.vb. All right. This is your VB code. Now, to make this correct, it should be in an app code folder. But we're making a simple thing here that we're just going to show something on the calendar. I don't even know what. Notice too that this is a protected sub when we look at that. All right, now let's go back over here a minute. When we look at the button, which we have right there, if we bring up the properties, notice that we do not have a name. Rather, we have an ID. System.web.userinterface.webcontrols.button. All right. Okay. So if we look here, we would still say BTN, and I'm just going to call it click. All right. And then I'm going to say click. So the basics here, other than the fact that the name is now called ID, the name property is now called ID, the basics don't change. You don't have as many options with the web button as you have with the Windows button. Okay? Notice here too, you have system.web.ui.webcontrols.calendar. It looks the same, it works the same, but it is a web form calendar, not a Windows one. So this would be CAL in or arrive. Okay. We're just going to call it arrive. All right. So what we're going to do over here, something real simple, we're going to say when this is clicked, CAL arrive dot hang on here a minute. I was looking for the default date. It's here somewhere. Of course, it can't be named default, right? Well, let's look at other monthly style. Let's change the style on it. Equals, no, I forgot that one. We don't want that one. All right. So let's look at this. Dot arrival dot selected day. Wherever it got to here. Dot selected date equals today. Oops. Okay. So we'll simply have the selected day start on today. So we'll save this and we'll go over here because I want to run it. I want you to see what happens when you run it. Okay, this is going to come up here. Page cannot be run in debug mode because debugging is not enabled. Modify the web config file. We'll talk about that. But okay, so notice what it does. It launches a browser in localhost. Now you will get very familiar with localhost. Localhost is, here we go. Localhost is what it calls IIS. Right? So if I click, there it's selected the 21st. Very simple, all right? But it uses all of the components that a very complex web page would use, except for style sheets, which we'll talk about as we get through here. But all right, we have the form, which is the HTML. We have the controls, and we have events. All right. Okay. So what I want you to try to do for next time is create your own very simple web page. It can have one label on it, and when you click the button it can say hello or something. I'm serious. I'm talking that simple. Because of the I just want you to see. Okay, now what's the matter? I see questions here. Because when I renamed the button, is that what you're looking at? Yeah, it did not automatically rename the button. What code looks wrong? Yes, it's still button 1 and it worked. Okay, I see your question, guys. All right, let's go back to VB here for a minute. All right, do you see this handles button click.click? It honestly doesn't matter what is here. This tells it it's btn1.click. The reason this is here is because when I double-clicked to create it, it had not renamed the button yet. Only thing that matters is what is right here. This could say, you know, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. It doesn't, well, no, maybe that's too long, but I don't think so. It doesn't matter. This is what matters, because this is where it tells you the control and the event. And yes, it's much easier to debug and maintain if everything says the same. Okay? All right. It used a default at the time. So if ours is like that and works, you won't take off. Carissa. In the first place, for everything except this first one, you are going to have a, give me a minute. You're going to have a Visio diagram, okay? Yes, as long as you rename it before you double click. Or, okay, if you forget to rename it before you double click, you can do this number. You can come in here and you can just do this and change it yourself. And it doesn't, it'll be just fine. All right. And yes, whoever said design before you code, yes. No, that's not true, Nikki. Most servers, most internet servers, okay, Now, we haven't talked about publishing this out, but when you publish it out to an internet server, remember what this said. If you look at the diagram I showed you, the program resides on the server, and the program runs on the server. So it will display perfectly on a Mac, because the Mac only gets back what the HTTP sends it back. You need to go back and take a look at that diagram in the first, the Content 1 notes, or the Content Notes 1, whatever the heck I called that thing, and that's in your content in D2L. But if you look at that diagram, you'll see it's all the processing for dynamic websites are done on the server. So because they're done on the server, it doesn't matter what you're running on your machine. Your browser handles that transformation. Okay? Any other questions? Now, I am so not going to push my luck with this and try to bring up a templated website, because the templated website has CSS and everything else on it. And I'm going to try it with everything running before I try it in class and have everything crash on me, which is exactly what's going to happen, I'm sure. It's not going to. All right. Carissa, this is your fault if I crash. I'm just telling you. All right. So if we go ahead and we do a new website. Okay, do I have this? I have it running. I have to stop it. There we go. File, new website. And we're going to create a website here. All right. And yeah, I'll just leave it there, but it's going to be Carissa problem. Okay, so it's Carissa's problem if it crashes. Okay. All right. So you see what you get when you bring up a website like this. Okay. You need to talk. I need to talk about these things first. All right. The account. The account, the default website here automatically provides you with a place for logins. All right. Your app data we've already talked about. You also have scripts. You have some jQueries that run. Let me bring this up. Okay. Yeah, jQuery is such fun. All right, content loaded. I thought, no. Okay, so you can, that's your documentation there. I thought this handled the login, but of course, it doesn't give you any. All right. This is jQuery to select browsers and trim white space and do that kind of things. Okay? And it wasn't what I thought it was. All right. We have our styles now. There is one style for the entire site. And you guys, none of this should look unfamiliar to you. This is basic CSS. So the body and the background and all of this. And here, link, visited link, a hover, active, and here's the headings and a margin, and you have a page, and you have a header, and you have a main, and you have a left column and a footer, and let's keep, you know, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, okay? But all this is formatted in one site.css, right? So we can have standardization the whole way through, All right. Then we have default.aspx. All right. Our default, look at this. Okay. You have a placeholder right here. Now, this is a master page. I can't notice that I come up here and I get this red circle with a line through it. That means I can't change any of this. I can change this, but I can't change this stuff. I can change this if I go into the site master. A site master is what's used to create all other pages in the site. Like a dynamic web template, yes. Like a dynamic web template, absolutely. Just, you know, this is Microsoft. You can't run with this. Yeah. All right, so let's say I wanted to change this. Get back to the source. Here. I always use a split, and I didn't hit it that time, simply so that when I'm looking at something, okay, right there, I know where I'm at and what I'm looking at. I'm kind of funny about knowing exactly when I'm working with one of these master templates what I'm doing. Okay, I want to set the background color. Okay, and all right, I don't think this is going to be right, but let's try that. Yep, it is. Okay, so I set the whole background color. Now notice what happened there. There we go. Now we don't see this at all. Okay, so then we have to change this. Okay, so what is this? Oh, this is H1. I can't change it from there. It has to change from here. All right, so we pick another color. And we'll make it gray. That'll work. Okay. Then we'd have to update this, and I'm not going to mess with that. But do you see what I'm saying here? You can come in here and you can change it on the master. Once you change it on the master and save the master, then it is changed on your default. Now, I can't change it again right here, but I can change it there. So everything you want to work with is down here. Now, there's different ways of defining this, okay? And this happens to be our main content. If you're in Expressions Web 4, you can actually designate something as part of the master or allow it to be changed, one of the two. And we'll look at that. Now, here's a global ASAX, okay? Here, and what you do there, what you put here is something for the application startup, shutdown, unhandled error, new session, session ends. Now, when it ends, obviously, you know, maybe you want to write it out to a cookie or something. So that's where you'd put that data. Web config is right here. Notice that it says debug false. All right. So we would be putting debug true. So that when you answer that question that comes up when you go to run it, that's what changes this right here. Once you have it all debugged, you will change it back to false. Yeah. Okay, I hear typing. I'm coming. Yeah, strict should be true as well, since we did use it last semester. All right? But your information here will go over that. Now, I've talked long enough. What we're going to do is we're going to stop here today. We will pick up here, and what we're going to do is I want you to do that simple web page. It can be without a template. No, 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 no. Don't worry about the Chapter 7, Nikki. I'll tell you exactly what I want done next time. This time, I simply want you to make a web page without using a template. Start it from scratch. Okay, this is not out of the book. This is out of my head. All right. Let me see. Okay, hang on here a minute. Let me get back into this for a minute. These things, I turn them off and they keep coming back. It's like the thing that never ends. All right. Okay, I'll fix that. That's just not under. Simple one-page website right there. All right. That's where it's to be handed in. Create a simple one-page website on the flower of your choice. Oh, yeah, I forgot I wanted it done on a flower. Okay, so when you click the button, it needs to display information on the flower of your choice. If you want to try and do a picture too, that's fine, but you don't have to, because we didn't get to the pictures in class and they didn't show up. All right? Rose World, right. Okay? All right, so I'm going to let everybody go now. Does anybody know Kyle Muffley? Kelly, would you, you could email him or something and ask him why he wasn't in class. Tell him to get, or Brian, tell him to get in touch with me, please. Obviously, we've covered okay, well, but that's the only time he had a choice was for the 162 class, not for this class. As a matter of fact, he probably isn't even supposed to be in this class. Okay, the activity platform is up, guys. Your questions are out there for Chapter 7. Remember, thank you, Kelly. You will have, hang on a minute, Sherry. You will have I'll get out here in a minute. You are required to do your activities. You will have a test after Chapter 7. Okay? Now, as far as when we're meeting, I would like whoever can be to be here at 3:15 so that I can deal with the issues of audio and stuff and make sure. It seems to be that the best audio is coming through no, I'm not going to start class till 3:30. Just if anybody can be here early so I can run an audio check. The best audio seems to be coming through the webinar. Is that correct? Okay. With no lag, right? All right. Okay, so then that's what we're going to be using. So if somebody can be here on Monday, or on, I'm sorry, next Wednesday, just at 3:15, then we probably won't have to do it anymore after that. I just want to make sure we can get started on time so that this thing, we can get over on time. All right? Okay, then. You have your assignments. The Dropbox is up there. Shouldn't take you very long at all to do it. And don't forget your knowledge check, yada, 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 and whatever else is on the syllabus. The syllabus and the calendar are correct. Go away. Now what happened? Something just went screwy. I have no idea what just happened. All right. Okay, so everything should be fine. So everybody go away and do your work. And I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye. Oops. I didn't send myself back there. Okay. Oh, how do you get to the recording of the meeting? When I find out, I'll let you know. Okay? I'm not sure, but I will find out. My graphics lag right now, Mariella, is horrible. I keep ending up in places I can't even see. I'm walking through walls. Oh, well, it's really not set up to do this, I don't think. Okay, I'm still figuring this whole thing out. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I noticed that they updated it. Now all I got to do is figure out how to stop the stupid thing. Oh, and the webinar. I had something there a minute ago. Okay. Well, did everything sound all right and everything there? We were okay with everything? Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Okay. Well, that's good. Okay. Well, let me go and figure out what to do with this silly thing next. And I'll see you Tuesday because we'll start the 162 class. And I'll get you some questions and stuff on that tomorrow. Yes, please. Okay? All righty. See you next time. Bye-bye.